There are 5 narcissistic archetypes shaping power, status, and hierarchy, and most men unknowingly embody one of them. They believe narcissism is vanity, noise, insecurity made loud. That belief is how they are consumed by it. Narcissism is not a flaw of character, but a structure of dominance, a way the self positions itself against the world. Those who can identify their true nature gain leverage over others and over themselves. Those who cannot live inside a performance they no longer control, mistaking attention for authority and applause for loyalty, until the silence arrives and they discover they were never feared, only watched. The first is the Grandiose Narcissist, the most visible and therefore the most misunderstood. He announces himself before he is asked to speak. His presence demands recognition, his posture claims territory, his voice carries the assumption that it will be obeyed. He believes power is a spotlight, and that dominance must be witnessed to exist. Status is not something he accumulates quietly. It is something he must display, defend, and refresh daily. His identity depends on reaction. Without admiration, he feels himself thinning, dissolving, losing substance, so he compensates by expanding outward, louder, sharper, more absolute in his claims. This is his contradiction. He appears strong, yet his strength is outsourced. He appears confident, yet his confidence is rented from the room. The grandiose narcissist does not possess self-belief. He extracts belief from others and converts it into momentary certainty. When praised, he swells. When ignored, he panics. When challenged, he escalates. His dominance is theatrical, not structural. It works in crowds, in unstable hierarchies, in environments where appearance outruns memory. But the moment attention shifts elsewhere, the moment admiration hesitates, the moment the audience grows bored, his authority fractures. Misunderstand him, and he will dominate you. Understand him poorly, and you will mistake volume for inevitability. The grandiose narcissist gains power by overwhelming perception. He moves quickly, occupies space aggressively, reframes resistance as disrespect. Those who hesitate, who seek fairness or reciprocity, are crushed beneath his momentum. He thrives on the assumption that confidence equals competence. While others analyze, he declares. While others prepare, he proclaims victory. This is how he advances, by forcing the world to respond to him rather than evaluate him. But this same mechanism destroys those who rely on him or try to mirror him without comprehension. Followers believe proximity to his spotlight grants protection. Rivals believe confrontation will expose him. Both are wrong. The grandiose narcissist consumes allies and enemies alike because both serve the same function, reinforcement of self-importance. He rewards loyalty only as long as it feeds his image. He attacks opposition not to eliminate threat but to reassert superiority. Those who stand too close are drained. Those who stand too openly against him are targeted. Those who misunderstand his hunger become collateral. There is a deeper danger for those who recognize him in themselves. If you are this type, your greatest vulnerability is not arrogance, but dependence. You are enslaved to reaction. Your sense of worth rises and falls with applause, with validation, with visible dominance. You cannot retreat without feeling erased. You cannot go silent without imagining defeat. And because you believe power must be seen, you reveal yourself constantly. You show your hand. You announce your intentions. You mistake intimidation for control, unaware that true power often moves unnoticed while you perform. And this is where the structure shifts. Because not all narcissists are loud. Not all demand attention. Some collapse inward instead of outward. Some appear wounded instead of dominant. Some do not announce superiority, but suffer loudly when it is not granted. If the grandiose narcissist rules through spectacle, what happens when narcissism learns to weaponize fragility, resentment, and quiet grievance instead? What kind of danger emerges when the hunger for importance hides behind weakness rather than strength? The second archetype is far more difficult to detect because it does not arrive announcing dominance. It arrives wounded. The vulnerable narcissist does not stride into the room claiming superiority. He waits to be overlooked so he can feel wronged by it. His power is not drawn from admiration openly given but from sympathy extracted slowly. He appears insecure, misunderstood, chronically undervalued. Yet beneath this fragility lies the same core hunger as the grandiose type, the belief that he is special, deserving, and owed recognition that the world has cruelly withheld. His contradiction is quieter but no less dangerous. He believes himself superior, yet he cannot risk exposure. He feels entitled, yet he frames entitlement as injustice. Where the grandiose type inflates the self, the vulnerable type protects it through self-pity. His identity is built around grievance. Every slight becomes evidence. Every boundary becomes cruelty. Every success of another person becomes proof that the system is rigged against him. He does not compete, he compares. He does not dominate, he resents. And in that resentment, he cultivates a moral alibi for his bitterness. This is how he gains power. Not through force, but through obligation. The vulnerable narcissist makes others feel responsible for his emotional state. He speaks the language of pain fluently, selectively revealing wounds to elicit reassurance, loyalty, and protection. Those around him begin to soften, adjust, explain themselves, overextend empathy. He positions himself as the injured party, so that disagreement feels like abuse, criticism feels like betrayal, distance feels like abandonment. Slowly, the people near him learn to walk carefully, to avoid triggering collapse, to compensate for his perceived suffering. Misidentify him, and you will mistake his insecurity for innocence. You will assume he lacks power because he lacks confidence. You will believe that his passivity means harmlessness. This is the error that ruins people. The vulnerable narcissist is not powerless. He is indirect. He punishes not by attacking, but by withdrawing, sulking, withholding affection, rewriting history. He remembers every perceived slight and stores it as proof. When the moment is right, when guilt has softened resistance, he uses that archive to justify control, manipulation, and quiet revenge. Those who underestimate him suffer a slow erosion rather than a sudden blow. You begin by comforting him, then you find yourself defending yourself to him. Then you begin preemptively managing his emotions. His fragility becomes the center of the relationship. Your needs feel excessive by comparison. Your boundaries feel cruel. Over time, you are trained to feel powerful only when he feels better and guilty whenever you do. This is his leverage. He does not need to dominate openly. He only needs others to doubt themselves. There is an internal danger for those who recognize this type within themselves. If you are the vulnerable narcissist, you are addicted to justification. You need a reason for your stagnation, a villain for your disappointment, an external cause for your unmet expectations. Your sensitivity is real, but it has become armor. You hide behind it. You use pain as permission. Because you cannot tolerate exposure, you never risk mastery. Because you cannot risk mastery, you cling to grievance. And so your sense of superiority remains imaginary, forever untested, forever protected by complaint. But vulnerability can harden. Resentment can rot into cruelty. When the injured self stops seeking sympathy and begins seeking retaliation, narcissism mutates into something far colder. What happens when grievance no longer wants comfort but punishment? When entitlement sheds its mask of pain and reveals a hunger to dominate through harm instead? What kind of narcissist emerges when suffering becomes a license to destroy? There is a point where narcissism stops seeking validation and begins seeking damage. The malignant narcissist does not want to be admired, nor pitied, nor understood. He wants to dominate psychologically and to watch the effect take hold. Where the previous types are dependent on reaction, this one is energized by impact. He does not merely assert superiority, he tests it by breaking resistance. Control is not a means to security for him, it is pleasure. The internal contradiction here is not weakness masked as strength, but emptiness disguised as intent. The malignant narcissist understands people not as individuals, but as systems to be exploited. He studies reactions, vulnerabilities, moral reflexes, and uses them with precision. Empathy is not absent, it is inverted. He can read pain accurately because he needs to know where to apply pressure. He provokes, humiliates, destabilizes, then watches carefully. Every flinch confirms his leverage. Every emotional response reassures him that he exists, that he matters, that he can move others at will. Power, for him, is not visibility or approval. It is consequence. This is how he gains dominance. He creates fear without announcing it. He injects uncertainty, turns stability into tension, and positions himself as the unpredictable variable everyone must account for. People begin to self-censor around him, second-guess themselves, overthink their words. He escalates conflict strategically, then withdraws to observe the damage unfold. He thrives in chaos because chaos grants him deniability. If confronted, he reframes cruelty as honesty, manipulation as realism, betrayal as necessity. He never appears shocked by outcomes because he engineered them. Those who misunderstand him believe he is simply aggressive, perhaps damaged, perhaps reckless. They attempt to reason with him, to appeal to conscience, to set boundaries as if rules apply equally. This is fatal. The malignant narcissist interprets boundaries as invitations to test limits. He escalates when challenged, not out of anger but curiosity. He wants to see how far he can go before resistance collapses. Every concession teaches him where the line truly is. Every emotional reaction feeds his sense of superiority. The destruction he causes is not accidental. He isolates targets from allies, sows doubt subtly, frames others as threats, while presenting himself as indispensable. He rewards compliance intermittently to maintain hope. He punishes defiance disproportionately to install fear. Those caught in his orbit begin to lose clarity. They replay conversations, question motives, doubt their own perceptions. This disorientation is deliberate. When reality feels unstable, control becomes effortless. He does not need loyalty. He only needs confusion. There is a particular danger for those who sense this capacity within themselves. If you recognize elements of the malignant narcissist, you are not driven by insecurity or approval, but by domination. You feel most alive when others react. You are bored by harmony. You test people not to know them but to measure them, and because you believe the world is hostile and weak, you justify preemptive cruelty as strategy. Yet this path is unstable. Escalation becomes addiction. Control must increase to feel the same effect. Enemies multiply, attention sharpens, exposure becomes inevitable. And still, not all narcissistic power is overtly cruel. Some forms wear virtue instead of threat. Some dominate not through fear, but through moral authority, public goodness, and visible self-sacrifice. What happens when narcissism learns to disguise itself as righteousness? When the hunger for admiration hides behind service and ethics instead of aggression? What kind of leverage emerges when power is claimed through goodness rather than harm? Some forms of dominance do not intimidate. They inspire. They do not threaten. They reassure. The communal narcissist builds power, not by standing above others, but by standing in front of them as a moral example. He presents himself as selfless, principled, devoted to causes larger than himself. His language is saturated with values, service, sacrifice, and care. He appears generous with time, attention, and effort. Yet beneath this posture lies the same engine as every other narcissistic type, the need to be seen as exceptional, indispensable, and superior. His contradiction is subtle and therefore dangerous. He claims to give without expectation, yet he tracks every contribution. He presents humility, yet he requires recognition for it. His generosity is conditional, not transactional in obvious terms, but symbolic. Praise, loyalty, deference, and moral alignment are the currencies he demands. When others fail to mirror his values or validate his goodness, resentment builds quietly. He cannot tolerate being ordinary, and moral virtue becomes his chosen axis of elevation. This is how he gains influence. The communal narcissist positions himself as the ethical center of the group. He defines what is acceptable, what is compassionate, what is enlightened. Disagreement is reframed as immorality. Distance is reframed as ingratitude. Those around him begin to self-censor, not out of fear, but out of guilt. They question their own intentions, their own values, their own adequacy. He rarely needs to attack directly. The weight of moral expectation does the work for him. Those who misidentify this type assume goodness cannot be manipulative. They believe harm only comes from aggression, cruelty, or obvious self-interest. This belief leaves them exposed. The communal narcissist punishes subtly. He withdraws warmth. He withholds approval. He expresses disappointment rather than anger. He frames his dissatisfaction as concern for others rather than for himself. The result is the same: compliance through emotional pressure. People strive to regain his favor, to prove alignment, to restore the image of harmony he controls. The damage unfolds slowly. Relationships become performative. Authentic disagreement disappears. People adopt language, gestures, and beliefs, not because they are convinced, but because they want to avoid moral exile. The communal narcissist thrives in environments where virtue is visible and reputation matters. He gains authority by appearing indispensable to the group's identity. And because his power is cloaked in goodness, it is rarely challenged directly. To oppose him feels like opposing the values he claims to embody. There is an internal risk for those who recognize themselves here. If you are this type, you may believe your intentions absolve your behavior. You may convince yourself that influence earned through service is purer than influence taken through force. Yet your need to be central, to be admired for goodness, reveals the same dependency as louder forms of narcissism. When appreciation fades, when your role is questioned, resentment surfaces, you feel unappreciated, exploited, misunderstood, and in response, your generosity tightens into control. But there is still another form of narcissism that rarely exposes itself at all. One that does not rely on volume, vulnerability, cruelty, or virtue. One that hides behind restraint, intellect, and apparent self-control. If narcissism can rule through silence rather than display, through calculation rather than emotion, what does it look like when the self becomes a strategist instead of a performer? The final archetype is the one most people never see until it is too late. The covert strategist does not announce himself, does not collapse into grievance, does not indulge in cruelty openly, and does not seek public virtue. He is quiet, controlled, and observant. His narcissism is not expressed through emotion but through calculation. He believes himself superior, not because others praise him, but because he believes he understands them. Restraint is his camouflage. Intelligence is his shield. Silence is his preferred position of power. His contradiction is precise. He despises attention, yet he needs dominance. He avoids exposure, yet he requires control. Where other types demand reaction, he engineers outcome. He watches patterns, studies incentives, maps weaknesses. His sense of superiority comes from prediction. When events unfold as he anticipated, his self-image hardens. When people act as he expected, he feels confirmed. He does not need applause, he needs accuracy. Being right is his validation, and manipulation is the proof of it. This is how he gains leverage. He embeds himself where influence is indirect. He offers insight rather than command. He frames suggestions as logic, not desire. Others believe they are acting freely, unaware that options have been quietly narrowed. He rarely pressures, he nudges, he rarely confronts, he redirects. Emotional manipulation is subtle and delayed. He plants doubt, withholds clarity, introduces ambiguity, then allows others to reach conclusions that serve his position. Because he appears detached, people trust him. Because he appears rational, they defer to him. Misidentifying him is easy because he looks like discipline. He looks like maturity. He looks like someone above petty ego. This is the danger. The covert strategist's narcissism is concealed behind self-control. He does not need to dominate the room to dominate the outcome. Those who challenge him rarely realize they are doing so until consequences appear downstream. By then, alliances have shifted, narratives have solidified, and resistance feels irrational rather than necessary. He wins not by force, but by inevitability. Those who fall under his influence often believe they chose poorly, not that they were guided. They replay decisions and cannot locate the moment. Control was lost. That is because it never was, at least not overtly. He respects intelligence, but only his own. Others exist as variables. Empathy is selective. Morality is contextual. He does not seek to harm, but he does not hesitate if harm advances position. His greatest strength is patience. His greatest weapon is foresight. There is a particular risk for those who recognize themselves in this type. If you are the covert strategist, you may believe your restraint makes you immune to narcissism. You do not crave admiration. You do not seek validation. You do not need to be seen. Yet your need for control is total. You trust no one fully. You reveal nothing you cannot leverage. Over time, isolation becomes strategy rather than consequence. You win, but you do not connect. You dominate outcomes, but you never experience relief. And this is where the structure closes inward. When narcissism no longer needs attention, sympathy, fear, or praise, when it survives entirely on control and prediction, what remains beneath the strategy? Is it mastery, or is it simply another form of dependence? This time on never being surprised, never being exposed, never being wrong. If power becomes the avoidance of vulnerability rather than the assertion of strength, What happens the moment reality refuses to follow the script you wrote for it? If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you already knows this truth. Narcissism is not always loud. The most dangerous forms are subtle, rational, and hidden behind intelligence, morality, or restraint. Some narcissists dominate rooms, others dominate narratives, and the worst ones never look like villains at all. Now tell me in the comments, which type disturbed you the most? And be honest, did you recognize it in someone else or in yourself? If this message touched you, if it made sense, write in the comments, "I see the pattern." Let's see how many here are truly ready to recognize narcissism before it controls their lives. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's important, much more than you imagine. See you there.